Hi friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we talk about top 10 misconceptions about famous crimes and trials. Number 1 is Kitty Genovese did not die surrounded by 38 strangers, not counting political assassinations or celebrity murders. The 1964 stabbing of Kitty Genovese is one of the rare cases where the victim is more famous than the culprit. Genovese was raised to celebrity status only through death. Her death was even more devastating, knowing that more than 36 people watched her die and did nothing to help. Her murder was so shocking that it inspired a whole psychological phenomenon known as the Kitty Genovese syndrome, aka bystander effect. Number 2 is the trial of Dan White. Never claimed the Twinkie defense. In 1978, San Francisco was reeling from the double murder of Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk. Not only did the city lose two of its most prominent leaders, but the murderer was Dan White, another formerly reputable member of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. The city exploded in riots when White was able to get off by claiming, "The Twinkies made me do it." In what is now known as the Twinkie defense, White's lawyers claim that too many Twinkies and other junk food had made him crazy. Driven mad by the sugar rush, he killed the two politicians. Number 3 is the Scopes trial was a get-rich-quick scheme. The Scopes monkey trial is one of the most famous battles between science and religion in American history. In movies like Inherit the Wind, the trial is presented as one brave man fighting for truth against ignorance. John Scopes is a lone crusader standing up for the right to believe and teach what you want. However, this notorious showdown was not based on philosophy but rather financial need. Local businessman George Rapalaya wanted to bring attention to the small city of Dayton, Tennessee. Following the passage of the Butler Act, which banned teaching evolution in all Tennessee high schools, the ACLU said that they would pay anybody to challenge the law. In what is now known as the drugstore conspiracy, community leaders created the scam. They asked John Thomas Scopes to accept the ACLU offer. Number 4 is Eliot Ness did not bring down Al Capone. The past 50 years of movies and television have portrayed Eliot Ness as the man who, along with his band of incorruptible crime fighters, brought down Al Capone, the greatest gangster of all time. By destroying his illegal booze operations, Ness shipped Capone to Alcatraz. As anyone who has ever seen JFK knows, Kevin Costner movies are not exactly historical documents. While it's true that Ness hurt Capone's profits by breaking up his breweries, this was only a small part of Capone's empire. He made more money from gambling and prostitution than he did from bootlegging. Number 5 is the McDonald's coffee case was far from frivolous. Even though most people don't know the name Stella Liebeck, they have a strong negative opinion of her. She is more commonly referred to as the McDonald's coffee lady. She has become the go-to example of frivolous lawsuits. People think of her as a greedy opportunist who did not know that coffee was hot when she spilled some on her pants for $1 million. The real Stella Liebeck was an average person who took on a corporate behemoth and won. For years, McDonald's knew they had a problem with the way they made their coffee. If they heated their coffee much hotter than other restaurants, around 88 degrees Celsius, 190 degrees Fahrenheit, the aroma would flow out of the building and entice more customers to come in. Number 6 is Jesse James was not the Robin Hood of the West. Despite what countless musicians like Bruce Springsteen, Pete Seeger, and Warren Zevon sing, Jesse James was no hero of the working class. He did not trade against the governors and the banks or give to the poor. Like most thieves, he was a self-centered person who spent money on women, booze, and horses. He did not have some higher code. This is evident from the fact that he would hold up poor people just as much as anyone else. Instead of stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, he stole from the poor and gave to no one. Number 7 is John Wayne Gacy was not a killer clown. In some ways, one has to feel sorry for clowns. They were once a staple of children's parties and circuses, but now they only show up in nightmares. A lot of this can be traced to John Wayne Gacy and the false assumption that he used to kill people while dressed up as his alter ego, Pogo the Clown. However, he never murdered as a clown. For, he did murder children that he first encountered as a clown, But the murders and his clowning were entirely separate activities. He was a killer clown the same way that he was a killer gardener or killer chef or killer First Amendment activist who met Rosalynn Carter. These activities were just something that he did on the weekends. Number 8 is Lizzie Borden was not guilty of killing her parents even though the crimes happened nearly 125 years ago. The 1893 deaths of Abby and Andrew Borden are perhaps the only double murders to become a double Dutch rhyme. Most of what people know about the case comes from a cute little children's poem about the gruesome hackings. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. And when she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. 3. All the poem gets right was the order of the murders. Lizzie's stepmother was struck more than an hour before her father was murdered. Everything else about the poem is wrong. Number 9 is D.B. Cooper was not D.B. Cooper. There is so much about the 1971 hijacking by D.B. Cooper that we will never answer. Did he successfully land and then navigate the Pacific Northwest forest? Who was he before he orchestrated the only unsolved hijacking in American history? The case is so mysterious that even the things we think we know, we don't know. Most people get even this simplest fact wrong. D.B. Cooper never claimed to be D.B. Cooper. He bought the ticket to board the plane under Dan Cooper. By the time Cooper became a folk hero, Dan had somehow morphed into D.B. Number 10 is Charles Manson was not a serial killer. For some people, Charles Manson is the first serial killer to come to mind when they hear the phrase. That is an impressive feat of branding because Manson never actually killed anybody. He was not even present when any of the 7 murders were committed by his family. Serial killer is an actual term used by the FBI. They define a serial killing as the unlawful killing of 2 or more victims by the same offenders, in separate events, with an emotional cooling-off period between the murders.